Welcome to my art time-lapse video. Let's dive right into how I made this piece. For starters, I had to consider my prompt, which was Flutter. I decided I wanted to try illustrating wings for a more literal interpretation of the prompt, but to add an extra layer to the meaning, I also decided to make the focus romantic, like the fluttering of a heart. Having heard somewhere that Charlie likely has angel wings like her father, I took that and just ran with it. Also, love me some Chaggie. That pairing does not get enough love, seriously. Give us more Chaggie art, guys. Concept in mind, generally I would start pulling up some references, but for this one I wound up just going right into it, like a rebel. I think the final result would have probably been enhanced by having used refs from the start, so I do definitely highly recommend them. Some nights I get it though, you can have less brain power, as it were, to be able to process them, and you just kind of want to freestyle it. So, make sure that you are taking care of the fun that you're having while doing art, because that's also an important part of the process. For this piece, I began by blocking out the scene's general values roughly with a round brush. I stuck with a dark blue color, and I have pressure sensitivity on here to impact the opacity as I paint. To give the scene a sense of depth and to direct the viewer's eye, I made the foreground patch of clouds very dark, the middle where I wanted the characters to be very light, and the background to be more of a mid-tone, which is gentle on the eyes. Once I was satisfied with the composition, I select the darker patch that you see in the foreground, the clouds, and I actually separated that onto a new layer. And beneath that one, I created a new layer where you see the line art being created for Charlie and Vaggie. That way I was able to overlay those clouds over the top and make it feel more like there's depth to the scene. Having something in the foreground is definitely highly recommended for added realism, and it really draws the eye inwards. Something I should have done in retrospect was to make a skeleton of their entire poses instead of going straight into fleshing out the hair for Vaggie. You will see why a little bit later. I'll talk about that. The inspiration for this pose was taken from Renaissance paintings of angels I'd remembered seeing. I knew right away I'd want to make the halo behind Charlie's head look like gold leaf, and wanted lighting to be focused from that point downwards. Many artists tend to do a rough sketch first, then reduce the opacity of their sketch layer, and create a new layer that they draw over top of. I am a little bit of a rebel, and I don't actually do that all the time. Here, what you're seeing is in fact me going straight into the same layer, and I made sure to do my initial sketch with a lighter opacity on my brush just because I knew that I kind of wanted to just carve into it essentially. That way I knew afterwards I could go over what I'd done with a brush at a stronger opacity and essentially erase where I didn't want lines to be and sketch in or mark in stronger, firmer lines to really define the line art a little bit better. That's definitely not everyone's process. I would say do what works for you. I sometimes do this, sometimes I don't. It really depends on my mood. The trouble I'm having with Vaggie's legs really stems from the fact that I did not block out the skeleton of my pose, and I was unable to figure out how to insert them naturally into the scene. Solution? Add more hair. It ended up looking a little bit strange to me at the end, and I don't know if I'm fully satisfied having taken that route, but I was a little bit tired that evening and didn't want to bash my head against a wall repeatedly to try and figure out the leg position, so I just went with it. To add more immersion, I decided to take 2 feathers and kind of freehand them up in the top left corner just to fill the portrait a little bit more. I could have left the space blank, but I felt like it would be interesting to see feathers flying loose from Charlie's gorgeous array of wings. I tried adding a few more, didn't really feel it, so sometimes you just have to go with your gut. When it came to the coloring step, I kept it fairly simple and light with a sponge-style brush, something that layers very gently. I made a new layer and underneath I started blocking out some colors. I am an artist who tends to color pick, so I did definitely use some references for Charlie and Vaggie's color palettes and softened those down since I knew I wanted a bit more of a pastel approach. To achieve the gold leaf look for Charlie's halo, I started with a dark, warm, coppery hue and filled in the shape. I also alpha locked the line art layer and filled that portion in the same color. To push it more towards gold leaf specifically, I used a spatter textured brush to mimic a handmade appearance. I finished it off by adding a screen layer of yellow over the center of the halo to really make it pop. Near the end of the illustration is where you do all the finishing touches, which means doing the line art coloring. You don't necessarily have to do this if you don't want to, but I just alpha lock the layer and I go over it with some complementary colors that suit the palette. So for example, for Charlie's wings, more of a golden brown color, and for Vaggie's hair, sort of a gentle purple tone. Afterwards, I tend to go over the entire illustration with a final detail layer, where I just add finishing touches like more clouds in the foreground, for example, and a bit more of a dark hue and value of clouds in the back where the feathers are flying free, things that will help draw the eye towards where I really want the viewer to be looking. In this case, towards Charlie and Vaggie's beautiful angelic faces. I hope you enjoyed this video. It's my first time doing one with a voiceover, so let me know if you like it, or if you'd prefer I just stay quiet and let you guys see how this plays out. I really appreciate you all. Thank you so much for viewing, and I wish you a very lovely day.